Hi, hey, thanks for stopping by This Reader's Life. My name is Stephanie, and if you've never been here before, welcome. If you're visiting again, welcome back. And if you'd like to subscribe or like, it's so appreciated. Um, Otherwise, I'm just going to get started. This is a wrap up for the month of March. The last wrap up that I did, I believe, was March 15th. So it's sort of two and two in this case. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about April yet, but I will be talking about the books that I've read, a couple that I'm reading now, and also a couple that I did not finish. As far as to be read goes, I do have some ideas in mind. I always do. But I'm also going to do this right off the top so I don't forget. And that is my Little Blessings jar that my sister gave me a long time ago. And I'm going to I put all of the books that I'd love to read in here, and I'm going to pull one out. I cannot see what they say because I rolled them all up. And I'm going to unwrap it. Hold on. Let's do that and that. And let's unwrap it and see what we've got. It says, I'm reaching for my glasses, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And I have not read that, and it's been on my to-be read for a while. I've heard great things about it. I have no idea any more about it than that, but I will put it on my list of things to be read, and that's on my list now for April for sure. I am going to just go over my did not finish because I just want to get it out of the way before I start talking about the books that I really loved. So the first one was one that I pulled out of my blessings jar, and it was called Nesting, and I have it here. I went to the library. I checked it out. It's by, and again, I don't know for sure how to say her name, but Roisin O'Donnell, and I did not finish this book. I've read quite a few books that are about abusive situations, and I did like the fact that in this, so much of the initial abuse that was talked about wasn't violent physical abuse, but rather psychological abuse. But it just sort of went on and on, and I sort of felt like I already knew what the outcome was going to be. I knew it seemed unlikely to me that anything utterly horrible was going to happen to anyone. I felt like this was going to have a good ending, and I just decided not to finish it. I only have so much time, and this one didn't make it on my list. And you may see me do more of that. I've thought a lot about not finishing books, and I've sort of tried to overcome the whole guilt thing. And so this was one that I did not finish. Then the next one that I didn't finish is one that was a new release. It was called, I have to look here, In the Great Quiet, and it was by Laura Vogt. I don't know if it's a debut novel, but I know that it was published in March, I think, of 2026. Maybe not quite. Sometime in 2026 is when it was published. And this was a story about the Oklahoma land rush and a woman and a couple of her brothers who participate in the rush. And I think my expectations were just not so much for a Western type romance with I don't know that there's any spice in it at all, but I know that it turned into a sassy flirtation almost in the first chapter with some guy who everybody knew what his name was, and he was known to be sort of a bad boy, or however you want to put that. Anyway, it was just a little more of a Western romance than I was expecting. I thought it might be a little grittier than it was, and I just decided, I've read lots of books like that, especially when I was younger, and so I decided not to finish it. It's probably a very good book. It's based on her on Laura Vogt's either grandmother or great-grandmother's experiences. And like I said, I chose not to read it, but it's just mostly because the subject matter for me right now is not of great interest. So I decided not to read that one. So as far as what I did read, I finished 3 books that I definitely want to talk about. And I think I will talk about these in backwards order from what I read them. So the last one that I read, actually, I read yesterday. So the first book that I read was by Claire Keegan. It's a book of 3 short stories. The name of the book is So Late in the Day. And again, there's 3 stories. The first one is So Late in the Day. The second one is The Long and The Long and Painful Death. And the third one is Antarctica. And all of these stories had been previously published between 1999 and 2022. So that's over quite a long span. And in reading these stories, I think I liked the middle story, The Long and Painful Death, the best, which is about a woman who goes to a writer's retreat specifically to write. It's the home of a famous author who is, or either author or poet or essayist, who is now gone, but you can rent his home as a sort of a retreat, and it's very remote. And when she gets there, shortly after she arrives, a man knocks at the door, and he is a German gentleman who says that that the people at the agency who rent this out said it would be okay for him to stop by. So the story goes from there, and I enjoyed this immensely. I enjoyed the fact that she went there to write, and then watching her not write, which was I understand that really well, because anytime I sit down to write, I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to do 100 other things long before I ever actually get around to writing. The other story was about a gentleman who becomes engaged to a woman. He's a very structured, rigid individual, and he has found a woman who is pretty. She's pretty much a free spirit, and it's about how the relationship, I want to say, sort of deteriorates, but I enjoyed the story. It wasn't very complimentary towards men, but I certainly understood the type of man that she's talking about. I don't think he experienced any growth in this story, and I thought it was well written. It wasn't my favorite story that I ever read, but I did enjoy it. The third story, the last story in the book, was one of her earliest stories, which was from 1999. It was called Antarctica, and I found it disturbing. It was frightening. It involved a happily married woman who always wondered what it would be like to have an affair and decides to do it, and the results are tragic. I didn't enjoy the story. I enjoyed it right up to the point where the infidelity began, and then I thought, I just don't want to read this. I did go ahead and finish it, and again, I thought it was extremely well written. She packs so much into every sentence that every sentence matters, but that story I did not enjoy. So I will read more Claire Keegan, but I found this particular series of 3 stories just oddly one I liked, and the other 2 I found just a little bit disturbing. So that's what I have to say about that. I will say that I loved the short novella or long story Foster, but this one just wasn't for me quite so much. The next book that I'm going to talk about is one by Anne Tyler, who is her writing. She's been writing for a long time, and the name of the book is 3 Days in June. It's by Anne Tyler. It came out in 2025. And I've read Anne Tyler since I was in high school. And for a long time, I looked forward to every book that she wrote. She wrote a few that I really loved were Caleb's Crossing, I think it was, and Celestial Navigation, and Ladder of Years, Digging to America. And several before that, that she wrote. The Falling Down Time, I think, is one of hers. But anyway, and then there came a period when, and I discovered this in reading about Anne Tyler, that she had lost her husband, and I think maybe she was in a hard place at that time, And there were just a few books that she wrote that I didn't enjoy a lot, and I was so taken back by that because her writing is her stories were so reliable to me. And I felt like in 3 Days in June she came back, and I was so excited to read it. It was a story about a woman named Gail who has an ex-husband named Max and a daughter named Debbie. And these 3 days truly take place over 3 days. One is the day before her daughter Debbie's wedding, one is the day of her daughter Debbie's wedding, and the third is the day after. And this story starts out with her losing her job, and then she manages to get home. It's the day of the rehearsal dinner, and she's a little shaken, but she's fairly structured, and she's a little shaken by the reason for her. She wasn't fired, she quit, or she was fired. It depends on probably who you're talking to, and but as far as she's concerned, she walked away from her job. I think she was encouraged. That was the feeling that I got, and she was encouraged to consider something else because she was sort of accused of not really being a people person, and she just had such a hard time understanding that. And as you read the story, you realize that perhaps it's not so much that she's not a people person, but that her response to people is fairly guarded. So it makes it hard for her. But anyway, the story is it's just delightful. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. There is some infidelity in it. There's no spice, but there is some infidelity in it. There is, and there's definitely growth. And I think my favorite character was her ex-husband, Max, who shows up on the day before the wedding at her door with a cat in a cat carrier. And he says, I need to stay here because Debbie says her fiance is allergic to cats, so I can't stay with them, which had been the original plan. And she, of course, she lets him stay. And but she's just, and he keeps encouraging her, maybe you'd like to take this cat because I'm fostering the cat. And she keeps telling him, I'm not keeping this cat. So I found that comical and fun. As I said, she's a bit socially awkward, Gail, the main character, the mother of the bride. Her daughter Debbie is sort of a blend between her mother and her father, Max. And Max is, he's certainly not socially awkward. He's sort of socially oblivious, but he is probably my favorite character, and possibly the cat would be my other favorite character. But I really, really enjoyed this book, and seemed like it was Anne Tyler true to form, exactly what you would expect from Anne Tyler, and with slightly quirky characters and some growth of the characters and an ending that makes perfect sense to me. So that was 3 Days in June. And the other one that I read is an experimental novel called Lincoln in the Bardo. It was written by George Saunders, and it was published in 2017. And I don't even know how to explain this book. It was the most unusual book I've ever read. I've never read a book written the way that this was written. It is told entirely in snippets of conversation, almost entirely by people who are in the Bardo. And these people that are in the Bardo, I had to look up what Bardo actually means because I had never heard of it. But the Bardo is sort of a supernatural world. It's sort of the betwixt and between, according to Tibetan monk religion, which also incorporates some Indian Hindu, if I'm understanding it correctly. And it is the place that you go after you die to await your next life assignment. So before you are reincarnated to the next thing, you are in the Bardo. And this is the story of Lincoln's son, Willie, who died when he was 12 years old. And that would have been around 1862, if I'm remembering correctly. It's 1862. Willie is 12. Abraham Lincoln is, the war has begun. He is, and he loses his son, and he is heartbroken. This is the story of the people in the Bardo who watch as Lincoln comes back to visit his son, and his grief is so incredibly palpable. And of all of the things that I've ever read, I almost stopped reading this because it was heartbreaking. It truly heartbreaking. Um, and it was also disturbing and upsetting, and there were definitely comical moments in it. There are the main storytellers throughout this, um, other than the real person in it, the person that is not dead in it. There's only a couple, and those are the people who take care of the graveyard. And of course, Lincoln, when he comes to visit his son is in the Bardo with the others, and they've encouraged him. These three main narrators have encouraged Willie to move on, to just keep moving, that he should not stay there. And it's unusual for children to spend very much time there. And Willie feels that he can't go. He feels that there's some reason for him to stay there. And they're sort of beside themselves because they know it won't be good. That when a child stays, it's not a good situation. And so they're constantly encouraging him to leave. And they also, the three main narrators, one is a reverend, one is a man who has committed suicide because he is a homosexual, and his relationship has ended, and other than it being completely unacceptable during that time, he's heartbroken, and he still actually thinks that he is laying on the kitchen floor of his parents' home bleeding to death because he has slit his wrists. So he doesn't even know that he's dead, or won't accept that he's dead. And then one of the other narrators has more of a comical and common sense way of looking at things. So you sort of get all three of these dead people telling you the story in snippets, sort of almost talking to each other. One will correct the other. And this is in short little paragraphs throughout the entire, some of them are two sentences of one guy talking and then two sentences of another individual talking, and it goes back and forth. And for a while, it's very confusing, and then you start to pick up on all of that. And then when Lincoln comes in, they describe him and the way that he looks and his incredible grief. It's I have never felt anything with such the emotions that it brought forth were unbelievable to me. How sad I was for Lincoln and how incredibly sad he was. And I felt that part was so beautifully told, but parts of this story were absolutely, I can't say pornographic, but it bordered on pornographic. A few of the people have the most horrible language and the horrible habits. A few of the people are just, they barely pass through. You barely know what's going on with them. It's very supernatural and spooky and different and disgusting, but it's also beautifully written, so it's so hard to explain it. I can't say that I loved this book. I will never read it again, I can tell you that. I am reading it for my book group, my real life book group, and I am anxious to hear there's only three of us, and I know that one of us of the group truly loved it, and I'm so curious to hear what the other person thinks. But anyway, that was Lincoln in the Bardo, and it was a hard read. It took me a long time to read it, and I like I said, it's not something that I would ever read again, but I'm not sorry that I read it. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But anyway, that's those are the three main books that I've read in the last couple of weeks. The one that I liked the best has to be 3 Days in June. To me, that was a comical book. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it would make a great movie, and I can just almost see the people in it now. What I'm reading right now is, I'm still reading Middlemarch, and I'm actually listening to that. I have slowed myself down so much by deciding to listen to it, but I am enjoying listening to it. I'm just not rushing through it. I've made it to book 3, or part 3, but they call it George Eliot writes it as book 3. And I like the way that it goes back and forth. I like the writing. I like that it is well narrated. I'm really enjoying that. So I have no idea how long it's going to take me to read it, but it's obviously, I don't think I'm going to be done by the end of March. The other book that I'm reading is by Ariana Trajani, and it is The Good Left Undone. And that was published, I want to say 2020. Yeah, it was 2022. It was published in 2022, and it's a dual time story, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It is, it's about an Italian family of jewelers who, and also it's based on a true story of a woman who was actually a nurse during World War II. And right now I haven't gotten to the point, I'm to the point where she has become a nurse in Italy, and a little bit about her childhood. So it also moves forward to current time, and that is the nurse from the prior time. It is her granddaughter, and that's Matilda, and she is an elderly lady at this point. The story goes back and forth between Matilda and her family, her daughters, her husband, her grandchildren, and then it will go back to her mother, Domenica, who was a nurse during World War II, but I haven't gotten that far in the book yet. So that's one that I'm reading, is The Good Left Undone. I'm also reading Unbroken, a World War II story of survival, resilience, and redemption. It was published in 2010. Again, it is Laura Hillenbrand, and her name sounds very much like Ellen Hildenbrand, which I've gotten the two mixed up before, I think in comments on some of my YouTube comment or BookTube comments to other booktubers. But it is Laura Hillenbrand, and this is a story about World War II, a time in the Pacific. It's the B-24 bombers, and about a specific group that were they were shot down in the Pacific, and they spent, I want to say it's 46 or 47 days in a lifeboat, and until they finally literally float 2,000 miles into a group of islands that are occupied by the Japanese. So I'm about a third of the way through the book. They're about to be sent to a Japanese concentration camp, and I have no idea how these gentlemen are still alive. It is extremely well written. It is extremely exciting. It's exciting, and it's heartbreaking, and it's unbelievable. And those boys during World War II were amazing. It's like, it's so unbelievable that you can't stop reading. And to be real honest, if I was reading this and someone was making it up, if I was reading fiction, I would stop. I would say, this is too horrible. I do not want to read this. It's a horror story. And because it is true and it is real, I feel honored to read it. I feel such a sense of awe and wonder at what these gentlemen did. And they were babies. They were just boys. They were not very old. Pilots, and from all different walks of life. And their sacrifice was huge. It's unbelievable to me. Oh my goodness, they got to me. But that's what Unbroken is about, and I would encourage anyone to read that book. I don't think anyone should miss it. It makes me want to know so much more about World War II, and it makes me honor my country so much more than I ever did. It's unbelievable to me what those young boys went through. So that's what I'm going to say about that. I also watched a really good movie that I would encourage anyone that gets a chance to watch it. It is called Genius. It stars Colin Firth as Maxwell Perkins, who was an editor at Scribner. It also stars Jude Law as Thomas Wolfe, who wrote Look Homeward, Angel. And this story is basically about the relationship between the two of them when Max Perkins is given Thomas Wolfe's manuscript, and the friendship that develops between the two of them while they attempt to edit down 1,000 pages to a readable book that is Look Homeward Angel. And I think it was just a very, very well done movie, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I'm just going to recommend that too. I don't always do movies, but you may hear more of that. So that's what I've got for this week, or for this 2 weeks. And until we meet again, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and be kind to the planet. Be blessed. Have a good day. Bye-bye.